The barn smelled of hay and old wood and secrets that winter couldn't quite freeze. Kira pressed her forehead against the splintered doorframe, watching her breath fog in the bitter air as another storm rolled across the valley. 3 years she'd been alone in this forgotten corner of the Ashwood territory. 3 years since they'd cast her out for being wolfless, worthless, a stain on her family's name. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The other Omegas at least had their wolves, even if the pack treated them as little more than servants. But Kira? She had nothing. No wolf, no voice in pack matters, no future except the slow march toward irrelevance. Her tiny cabin sat at the very edge of pack lands, barely considered territory at all. The barn behind it was her only companion, housing the few chickens and goats that kept her from starving entirely. She should go inside. The storm was gathering strength, dark clouds swallowing the last light of dusk. But something held her there, a restlessness in her bones that had nothing to do with the weather. The forest beyond her property line whispered with wind and something else, something that made her skin prickle with awareness she shouldn't possess. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm, low and agonized, barely audible over the rising wind. A whimper that held both animal and something achingly human. Kira grabbed the lantern from its hook, her practical mind warring with instinct that screamed at her to investigate. Wolves didn't come this close to habitation, even forgotten habitation like hers, and injured wolves were dangerous, unpredictable. She should bar her door and wait for morning. Instead, she found her feet carrying her toward the barn, toward that sound of suffering that pulled at something deep in her chest. The lantern's glow cut through the darkness, illuminating swirling snow, and then, just at the tree line, a shape that made her heart stop. The wolf was massive, larger than any she'd seen even from a distance during pack runs she was never allowed to join. Its fur was dark as midnight, so black it seemed to absorb the lamplight rather than reflect it. Blood matted its coat, spreading in a pool beneath its body that steamed in the freezing air. Deep gashes scored its side, and one of its legs bent at an unnatural angle. But it was the wolf's eyes that froze her in place. Even dimmed with pain, they held an intelligence that seemed impossible, ancient and knowing and desperate. The wolf's lips pulled back slightly, not quite a snarl, more like an attempt at communication it couldn't voice. "Easy," Kira whispered, though her hands trembled. "I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's eyes tracked her movement as she approached. Every muscle in its massive body tensed despite its obvious weakness. This close, she could see the extent of the damage. Claw marks, deep and deliberately vicious, as if something had tried to tear it apart. Bite wounds on its throat and shoulders. And something else, a strange darkness spreading through its veins beneath the matted fur, like ink poisoning its blood. Someone had tried to kill this wolf, not just hunt it but execute it. "Who did this to you?" she breathed, kneeling despite every survival instinct, screaming at her to run. The wolf whimpered again, and the sound shattered something in Kira's chest. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, being nothing, being the girl nobody wanted, but she understood wounds, understood suffering, understood what it meant to be left to die alone. "I'm going to help you," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "But I need to get you inside. Can you move at all?" The wolf made a sound that might have been agreement or resignation. When Kira placed her hands beneath its massive shoulders, she gasped. Heat radiated from its body, fever bright and dangerous. But beneath the fever, something else, an energy that made her palms tingle, like touching lightning that had somehow become flesh. She shouldn't be able to move it. The wolf had to weigh 3 times what she did. But desperation gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. Or perhaps the wolf helped despite its injuries, dragging itself forward as she pulled. Inch by agonizing inch, they made it to the barn. The interior offered shelter from the storm but little warmth. Kira settled the wolf on a pile of clean hay in the corner farthest from the door, where the wind couldn't reach. The wolf collapsed immediately, its breathing labored and wet-sounding. "Don't die," she commanded, already running back to her cabin for supplies. "I didn't drag you in here just to watch you die." The storm hit in full force as she gathered everything she owned that might help. Clean cloths, her grandmother's herb collection, the bottle of honey she'd been saving, the precious jar of willow bark tea. Her hands moved with purpose learned from necessity. When you lived alone with no pack to call for help, you learned to heal yourself or you didn't survive. Back in the barn, the wolf had lost consciousness. Kira worked through the night, cleaning wounds that should have been fatal, packing them with herbs that had helped her through her own injuries over the years. The fever raged, the wolf's body burning hot enough that she had to constantly change the cool cloths on its head. As she worked, she talked, not because she expected the wolf to understand, but because the silence of her isolation had grown so heavy that even unconscious company deserved her words. "You're not from around here," she murmured, stitching a particularly deep gash with thread, meant for mending clothes. "Our pack wolves don't get this big. And these wounds, these weren't made by another wolf. These were made by something that wanted you to suffer." The wolf's ear twitched, the only sign it might hear her. "I know what that's like," she continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Being hurt by your own kind. They don't have to use claws to make you bleed." Dawn came gray and cold. The wolf still lived, though its breathing remained shallow. Kira had fallen asleep slumped against the barn wall, exhausted beyond measure. When she woke, she found the wolf's eyes open, watching her with that same impossible awareness. "You're still here," she said, relief flooding through her. "Good. That means you're a fighter." The wolf's tail moved slightly, the barest hint of a wag. Over the following days, a routine emerged. Kira would wake before dawn, tend to her animals, then spend every spare moment in the barn with the wolf. She brought it water, which it lapped weekly. She tried different foods, discovering it would only accept raw meat from the rabbits she managed to trap. "You're expensive to keep alive," she told it on the third day, watching it eat with slightly more strength. "Good thing nobody comes out here to check on me." How would I explain harboring a wolf that's clearly not pack? The wolf's eyes met hers, and she could have sworn she saw understanding there, maybe even gratitude. By the 5th day, the fever had broken. By the 7th, the wolf could stand, though it favored its injured leg heavily. Kira fashioned a splint from barnwood and strips of cloth, talking through the process as she worked. "This is going to hurt," she warned, "but it'll heal straighter this way. Trust me." The wolf sat perfectly still as she set the bone, only a low whine escaping when the pain must have been excruciating. When she finished, it pressed its massive head against her shoulder, a gesture so human, it made her throat tight. "You're welcome," she whispered, running her fingers through its dark fur. The storm that had brought the wolf continued intermittently, dumping snow that made the world outside her small property nearly impassable, which was fortunate because it meant no one from the pack came to bother her. No one to question why her barn door stayed shut or why she made twice as many trips outside as usual. On the 10th day, Kira noticed something strange. The darkness in the wolf's veins, the poison or corruption she'd seen that first night, was receding. Not quickly, but visibly, as if her constant care and the herbs she'd been applying were actually working against whatever unnatural toxin had been used. "What are you?" she asked softly, cleaning around a wound that had closed almost impossibly fast. "Because you're not just a wolf, are you?" The wolf's eyes held hers, and for a moment she felt certain it wanted to answer. Its mouth opened, a sound emerging that wasn't quite a howl, not quite words, but something in between that made her heart race. By the 14th day, the wolf could walk without limping. It followed her around the barn like a shadow, watching as she fed the chickens and milked the goats. When she sang, old songs her grandmother had taught her before the binding ritual that had locked her wolf away forever, the wolf would settle at her feet, eyes closed, as if the melody brought it peace. "My grandmother used to say I had a healing voice," Kira said one evening, sitting beside the wolf as twilight painted the barn in shades of purple and gold. "She said it was a gift from the moon goddess herself, proof that I was meant for something more than servitude." She laughed bitterly. Then the pack elders determined I had no wolf, and suddenly my grandmother's words meant nothing. They bound whatever was inside me, locked it away where I couldn't reach it, said it was for my own protection, that I'd go mad otherwise. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The wolf pressed closer, its warmth seeping into her side. "Sometimes I wonder if they lied," she continued, voice barely above a whisper. If they bound my wolf not to protect me, but to protect themselves. From what I don't know, I'm nobody. Just a cast-off living on the edge of nowhere. The wolf made a sound, low and disagreeing, that made her smile despite herself. You think I'm somebody? She asked. That's sweet of you. But you don't know me well enough yet to realize how wrong you are. On the 20th day, Kira woke to find the wolf sitting by the barn door, staring out at the forest beyond. The way it held itself had changed, less like an injured animal and more like a sentinel standing guard, protecting something precious. You could leave now, she said quietly, though the words hurt to speak. You're strong enough. The storm's past. No one would stop you from going home, wherever that is. The wolf turned its head, looking at her with eyes that held such fierce denial that she actually stepped back. Okay, she breathed. Okay, you can stay, as long as you want. The wolf's tail wagged, and it returned to her side, pressing its forehead against her palm, in what had become their greeting. By the 25th day, the last of the poison had left the wolf's system. Its coat gleamed with health, its movements fluid and powerful. It was magnificent, terrifying in its beauty and strength, and utterly devoted to Kira in ways she couldn't begin to understand. You're going to get me in trouble, she told it, scratching behind its ears. If anyone from the pack sees you, they'll kill you first and ask questions later. Strange wolves aren't welcome in Ashwood territory. The wolf huffed, as if to say let them try. On the 30th day, something changed. Kira was bringing fresh water to the barn when she heard voices, male voices, coming from the direction of the pack center. Her heart leapt into her throat as she recognized one of them, Garrett, the pack's head warrior, and his hunting party. She rushed into the barn, finding the wolf already alert, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from its chest. Hide, she hissed, pushing at its massive shoulder uselessly. Please, you have to hide. But where? The barn was small, open. There was nowhere for a wolf this size to conceal itself. The voices grew closer. Check the outcast's property, Garrett was saying. The tracks we've been following lead this direction. Ice flooded Kira's veins. They were tracking the wolf. After 30 days, they were still hunting it. We know the Alpha King survived the ambush. Another voice added. His blood trail led here. If that wolfless bitch is harboring him, the penalty is death. Alpha King. The words seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Kira turned slowly to face the wolf, seeing it with new eyes. The size, the intelligence, the impossible strength, the way it carried itself with unconscious authority. You're not just any wolf, she whispered. You're him, the Shadow King, sovereign of the Northern Territories. The wolf, the king, dipped its massive head in acknowledgement, and Kira realized she'd just spent 30 days, nursing the most powerful alpha in existence, the one her pack had apparently tried to murder, the one whose presence in her barn was now a death sentence they both would share. The footsteps reached her door. Kira Ashwood. Garrett's voice rang out. Open up. We know you're in there. She looked at the wolf, this king who had trusted her with his life, who had stayed when he could have fled, who watched her with eyes that held something she was afraid to name. What do we do? She breathed. The wolf moved closer, pressing against her side, and then it did something impossible. It began to shift. Bones cracked and reformed, fur resethered. The massive wolf form condensed, changed, became something else, someone else. In less than a minute, where a wolf had stood, a man now knelt. He was breathtaking, tall, powerfully built, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that same impossible color that had watched her so intently. Scars marked his skin, testament to battles. He survived. But it was the crown tattoo that covered his shoulder and crawled up his neck, pulsing faintly with silver light, that confirmed what she already knew. Thank you, he said, his voice deep and rough from disuse, the first words he'd spoken in 30 days. For everything, Kira Ashwood, but now it's my turn to protect you. He rose to his full height, power radiating from him in waves that made the air itself feel charged. Outside, Garrett's voice called out again, impatient and threatening. The Alpha King looked at Kira, at this cast-off Omega who had saved him when she had every reason to let him die. And something shifted in his expression. Something primal and possessive and absolutely certain. They wanted me dead, A said quietly. But the moon goddess led me to you instead. Now I understand why. His hand rose to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. You're mine to protect now, little healer, and I keep what's mine. Before Kira could respond, before she could process the implications of those words or the way her entire body responded to them, the barn door burst open. Garrett stood framed in the entrance, 3 warriors behind him, weapons drawn. His eyes widened in shock when he saw not a wounded wolf but a man, naked and powerful, and absolutely furious, standing between him and Kira. Your Majesty, Garrett stammered, clearly recognizing him despite 30 days having passed. We were told you'd perished from your wounds. Were you? The Alpha King's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Or were you hoping to finish what your beta started? The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Garrett's face pallid. I don't know what you mean. We've been searching for you, hoping to bring you back to the pack that poisoned me. The king stepped forward, and all 4 warriors instinctively stepped back. To the beta who orchestrated an ambush using corrupted magic? To the alpha who looked the amber first, other way while his second in command committed treason? Kira's mind reeled. Her pack had tried to assassinate the Shadow King. Her beta, Marcus, who everyone respected and feared, was a traitor. And now she was standing in the middle of it all, a witness to secrets that would get her killed. The girl knows nothing, the king said, as if reading her thoughts. She found an injured wolf and showed compassion. That's not a crime. She harbored you for 30 days, Garrett countered, finding some of his courage. Pack law states. I don't care what pack law states. The king's power flared, making the very walls of the barn tremble. She's under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Silence fell, broken only by Garrett's harsh breathing. The warriors behind him exchanged glances, uncertainty written across their faces. We should return to Alpha Theron, one of them said finally. Report that His Majesty survived. He'll want to know. He already knows, the king interrupted. Why do you think he sent you here? Not to rescue me, but to ensure I was truly dead and eliminate any witnesses who might have helped me. The truth of it settled over them all like ash. Garrett's hand tightened on his weapon, but he didn't raise it. He wasn't stupid enough to attack an Alpha King, even one who had been recently injured. What happens now? He asked, his tone careful. The king's arm moved around Kira's shoulders, drawing her against his side in a gesture of unmistakable acclaim. Now? Now you return to your Alpha and your traitor Beta. Tell them the Shadow King lives. Tell them he knows everything. And tell them, his eyes gleamed with predatory promise, that their reckoning is coming. He paused, his grip on Kira tightening slightly. Oh, and one more thing. Tell them I've found my mate, the one the prophecy spoke of, hidden among the cast-offs and forgotten. Tell them the Moon Healer's bloodline isn't as extinct as they believed. Kira's legs went weak. Mate? Moon Healer's bloodline? What was he talking about? But Garrett's face had gone ashen, confirming that the king's words held significance she didn't yet understand. Go, the king commanded. Before I change my mind about letting you leave. The warriors fled, Garrett practically dragging them in his haste to escape. When their footsteps had faded, when silence returned to the barn, Kira finally found her voice. What just happened? She whispered. What did you just tell them? The king, this man who had been a wolf under her care for 30 days, turned to face her fully. His hand rose to the back of his neck, fingers tracing a symbol there that began to glow with silver light. I told them the truth, he said softly, though I only just realized it myself. He stepped closer, and Kira found she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare up into eyes that held entire universes. You're my fated mate, Kira. The bond snapped into place the moment you touched me that first night. I felt it even through the poison, even through the pain. You called to something in me that has been searching for 32 years. That's not possible, she breathed. I'm wolfless. I'm nobody. Fated mates need the bond to recognize each other, and I can't. You're not wolfless. His voice was gentle but absolute. You're bound. There's a difference. Someone locked your wolf away, hid your true nature. But I can feel her, Kira. She's there, trapped beneath a spell that never should have been cast. His fingers traced the line of her jaw, the touch sending electricity through her entire body. And you're not nobody. You're descended from the Moon Healers, the rarest bloodline in existence. The pack that cast you out? They knew exactly what you were. That's why they bound you. Because a Moon Healer has the power to break corrupted magic, to restore balance. You're dangerous to anyone who thrives on deception. Kira's mind spun. Too much information, too many revelations, all crashing down at once. I'm just a healer, she said weakly. I know herbs. I know how to set bones. That's all. Is it? He challenged. Then explain how you drew poison from my veins that should have killed me in hours. Explain how wounds that would take an Alpha King weeks to heal closed in days under your care. Explain how your voice calmed a rage inside me that I've carried since birth. She had no answer, because he was right. She'd known something was different, known her healing abilities exceeded normal bounds. She'd just never understood why. The bond, she whispered. If you're right, if I'm truly your mate, what does that mean? Something fierce and possessive flickered across his face. It means you're coming with me, back to my kingdom, where I can protect you properly, where we can break the binding on your wolf and unlock your true power. And if I refuse? His expression softened slightly. Then I'll stay here. In this barn, in this forgotten corner of a pack that tried to murder me. Because now that I've found you, Kira Ashwood, I'm not leaving without you. The silence that followed his declaration felt alive, heavy with implications Kira couldn't fully process. She stepped back, needing distance from the overwhelming presence of him, from the heat of his body and the intensity of his gaze that seemed to see straight through every defense she'd built over 3 years of isolation. You can't just decide my entire future in a moment, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. I don't even know your name. Something flickered across his face, surprise, then what might have been shame. You're right. 30 days you cared for me, and I never properly introduced myself. He inclined his head, a gesture that held both respect and apology. I am Kaelin Nightshade, Alpha King of the Shadow Crown Pack, High Sovereign of the Northern Territories, and apparently, a ghost of a smile touched his lips, very poor at social conventions. Kaelin, she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt right somehow, like a word she'd been waiting her whole life to speak. And you deserve more than a moment, he continued, his voice gentling. You deserve courtship, time to know me beyond the wolf you healed. But we don't have that luxury. Garrett will reach your alpha within the hour. By nightfall, this place will be swarming with warriors who have orders to kill us both. The reality of their situation crashed over Kira like ice water. Her home, her barn, the small life she'd carved from nothing, all of it, was about to become a battleground. Why? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. Why would my pack try to kill you? You're an Alpha King. The treaties mean nothing when ambition and corruption take root. Kaelin moved to the barn's small window, peering out toward the forest. Your beta Marcus made a deal with forces that should have remained buried. He wants power, wants to overthrow the old order and establish something new. Something darker. He turned back to face her, and she could see the weight he carried in every line of his body. I've spent the last 5 years trying to root out this corruption, traveling the borderlands, investigating disappearances and strange attacks. 3 months ago, I discovered Marcus was the center of it all. He's been using forbidden magic, blood rituals that require sacrifice. Kira's stomach turned. The children. There were rumors about children going missing from the outer territories. Not rumors, truth. His hands clenched into fists. 15 children taken over 2 years. Used as vessels in rituals meant to amplify Marcus's power, to help him create an army of corrupted wolves that answer only to him. Moon Goddess, Kira breathed. And Alpha Theron? Either complicit or willfully blind. I haven't determined which yet. Kaelin's expression darkened. But, when I confronted Marcus at the border summit, when I told him I had proof of his crimes, he didn't deny it. He attacked with 20 of his corrupted wolves. The poison they used was specifically designed to kill an Alpha King wolf's bane, mixed with shadow root, and something else, something ancient and wrong. He touched his side, where the worst of the wounds had been. I should have died. By every law of nature and magic, I should have been dead within 6 hours. But then I found your barn. Found you. The Moon Goddess led you to me, Kira said softly, remembering the inexplicable pull she'd felt that night, the way something had drawn her outside despite the storm. "She did," Kaylin agreed. "Because you're the only one who could save me. Moon Healer blood carries immunity to dark magic, the ability to purify corruption. Your touch, your care, your healing, it wasn't just medicine, Kira. It was your birthright awakening." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, but stopped just before touching her, giving her space to choose. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you have no reason to trust me beyond 30 days of silence. But I'm asking you to take a leap of faith. Come with me. Let me show you what you truly are, help you unlock the power that was stolen from you." Kira looked up at him, at this king who had trusted her completely in his most vulnerable estate, who watched her now with hope and fierce determination, and something deeper she was afraid to name. "If I go with you," she said carefully, "what happens to this place? To the animals I've cared for?" "We take them with us," he said without hesitation. "Everything that matters to you comes with us. And if the bond is real, if I'm truly your mate, what does that mean for us?" His hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away, before cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted his powerful frame. "It means you're my equal in all things. Not a possession, not a possession. Subordinate, but my partner, the Luna to my alpha, the moon to my shadow." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "It means I will spend every day for the rest of our lives proving I'm worthy of the gift the goddess gave me when she led me to your door." The sincerity in his voice, in his eyes, shattered something inside Kira. 3 years she'd been alone, told she was worthless, treated as less than nothing. And now this man, this king, looked at her like she held the entire world in her hands. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I don't know how to be what you're saying I am." "Neither do I," he admitted, surprising her with his honesty. "I've been alone for 7 years since my parents were killed. I've ruled with strength and strategy, but I've never had a true partner. We'll figure it out together." A sound from outside made them both freeze, the snap of a branch, too deliberate to be animal. Kaylin's entire posture changed, becoming the predator he'd been hiding beneath human form. "They're already here," he growled. Marcus didn't wait for nightfall. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. "How many?" Kaylin's nostrils flared as he scented the air. 20, maybe more. They're surrounding the property." His eyes met hers, fierce and protective. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens. Stay." "No," Kira interrupted, surprising them both. "I'm not helpless. I may not have a wolf, but I know this land better than anyone. There's a root cellar beneath the barn floor, hidden. It leads to a tunnel that comes out near the river. Pleasing Wolf, we might try and hang, and I may not have a wolf, but I know this land by." Kaylin stared at her. "How long has that been there?" "My grandmother built it," Kira said, already moving to the corner where Hai covered the trapdoor. "She said every healer needs an escape route. I never understood why until now." Together they pulled up the door, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. Kaylin's expression shifted to one of reluctant admiration. "Your grandmother was wiser than most warriors. But this tunnel will only help if we can reach it before they breach the barn." As if summoned by his words, Marcus's voice rang out across the property, amplified by power that made the barn walls vibrate. "Kaylin Nightshade, I know you're in there. Come out and face justice for your crimes against this pack." Kira's blood ran cold. "He's lying. Making you the villain." "Of course he is," Kaylin said grimly. "It's what I would do if I were trying to cover up treason." He looked at the tunnel, then back at the barn door, calculation clear in his eyes. "We need a distraction, something to buy us time to reach the tunnel." "I have an idea," Kira said, moving to where she kept her supplies. She grabbed the jar of rendered animal fat, the bag of flour she used for the chickens, and her flint. "It'll only work if you can shift quickly." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You want me to draw them away while you set a fire?" "Not a real fire," she corrected, already mixing the ingredients with hands that barely trembled despite her fear. "Smoke. Thick, black smoke that looks like the barn is burning. They'll panic, rush in to stop the spread. That's when you run for the tree line in wolf form." "And leave you here?" His voice turned sharp with denial. "Absolutely not. I'll be in the tunnel. Kira insisted, meeting his gaze steadily. By the time they realize the fire is fake, I'll be halfway to the river. We meet there, then follow the current north toward your territory. If they catch you, they won't. She finished preparing the smoke mixture, her grandmother's teachings coming back with crystal clarity. Trust me, the way I trusted you. Kalen looked at her for a long moment, something profound shifting in his expression. Then he pulled her close, his forehead touching hers in a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss. You're already thinking like a Luna, he murmured. Strategic, brave, willing to risk yourself for the greater good. I'm thinking, like someone who wants to live, Kira corrected, but she didn't pull away from his warmth. When this is over, he said softly, when we're safe in my kingdom, I'm going to properly court you, show you what it means to be cherished. I'm going to hold you to that, she whispered back. A crash against the barn door made them spring apart. Marcus's patience had run out. Last chance, Nightshade, come out or we burn you out. Ironic, Kalen muttered, already beginning to shift. Given what we're about to do. Kira watched in awe as his human form melted into the massive black wolf she'd nursed for 30 days. Even knowing what he was, seeing the transformation stole her breath. He was magnificent, deadly, and beautiful, and utterly hers in ways she was only beginning to understand. The wolf pressed against her one last time. A goodbye and a promise. Then it positioned itself by the door, muscles coiling with barely restrained power. Kira struck her flint, igniting the mixture she'd prepared. Thick black smoke immediately billowed upward, filling the barn with impressive speed. She grabbed a blanket, fanning the smoke toward the cracks in the walls, making sure it would be visible from outside. Shouts of alarm rose from Marcus's warriors. The barn's on fire. Alpha, the barn. Break down the door, Marcus commanded. Don't let them burn to death. We need the king alive for questioning. The instant the door splintered inward, Kalen exploded through the opening like a shadow made flesh. Kira heard screams, the sounds of chaos as warriors scrambled to avoid the massive wolf that tore through their ranks with brutal efficiency. She didn't wait to see more. She dropped into the tunnel, pulling the trapdoor closed above her and praying the smoke would hide its outline. Darkness enveloped her, absolute and terrifying, but she'd explored this tunnel as a child, knew every twist and turn by heart. Her hands found the walls, using them to guide her as she moved as quickly as she dared. Behind her, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the drip of underground water and her own harsh breathing. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever. Her shoulders brushed the narrow walls, her head occasionally grazing the low ceiling. But she pushed forward, driven by the need to survive, to reach the river, to find Kalen and prove she could be the partner he believed her to be. Finally, blessedly, she saw light ahead, the tunnel's exit, concealed behind a curtain of willow branches that hung over the riverbank. Kira emerged into cold afternoon air, gulping it down as she oriented herself. The river rushed past, swollen with snowmelt. North, Kalen had said. Follow it north. But which way was north? The storm clouds still obscured the sun, and she'd lost her bearings in the tunnel's darkness. A howl split the air, coming from her left. Not close, but distinct. Kalen, calling to her. Kira ran toward the sound, her feet finding purchase on the slippery rocks that lined the river. Her breath came in gasps, her body protesting after the adrenaline of escape began to fade. But she couldn't stop. Not yet. She rounded a bend and nearly collided with the massive black wolf that stood waiting. Relief flooded through her so intensely her legs almost gave out. You made it, she gasped, reaching out to touch his fur, needing the reassurance that he was real and whole. The wolf pressed against her, and she felt his warmth, his strength, his absolute certainty that they would survive this together. Then he shifted, becoming Kalen once more, gloriously naked and unbothered by it as he caught her against his chest. You're brilliant, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That smoke trick bought us exactly the time we needed. Marcus thinks we burned to death. I heard him ordering his warriors to search the ashes. How long before he realizes we're not there? Kira asked. Not long enough. Kalen's expression grew serious. We need to move. On fast. My territory is 3 days' run from here. 2 if we don't stop except to rest. I can't keep up with your wolf form for that long, Kira admitted, hating the limitation. You won't have to. Kaylin's eyes gleamed with something that might have been mischief under different circumstances. "You're going to ride." Kira blinked. "Ride? You mean, on my back, yes." He was already shifting again, the transformation rippling through him like liquid night. When the wolf stood before her once more, it lowered itself slightly, making its intention clear. "I've never ridden a wolf before," Kira said, approaching cautiously. The wolf huffed, a sound that clearly communicated get on already. With shaking hands, Kira climbed onto his back, gripping the thick fur at his shoulders. The moment she settled, the wolf rose smoothly, adjusting to her weight with ease. "Don't drop me," she whispered. The wolf began to run. It wasn't like riding a horse. There was no saddle, no reins, just the fluid power of the wolf's muscles bunching and releasing beneath her. Trees blurred past as they followed the river north, moving at a speed that should have been terrifying but somehow felt like flying. Kira pressed low against Kaylin's back, trusting him completely as they raced through the wilderness. The cold air whipped her hair back, stung her cheeks, but she barely noticed. All she could focus on was the steady rhythm of his stride, the warmth of his body, the way he navigated obstacles without breaking pace. They ran for hours, pausing only once when Kaylin caught the scent of clean water. He shifted long enough to let Kira drink and relieve herself behind a cluster of bushes. Then they were off again. As twilight descended, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Kaylin finally slowed. They'd reached a small clearing protected on three sides by rocky outcroppings. A natural shelter. Kira slid from his back, her legs trembling from hours of gripping his sides. The wolf shifted, becoming the man once more, and she tried very hard not to notice how the dying light played across his bare skin. "We rest here for the night," Kaylin said, immediately gathering fallen branches for a fire. "It's too dangerous to continue in darkness. Even I can't see every hazard." Kira nodded, too exhausted to argue. She sank down against one of the rocks, watching as he built a fire with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, flames crackled cheerfully, pushing back the cold. "Here," Kaylin said, draping his shirt, the one he must have carried in his mouth while running around her shoulders. "You're shivering." "You need it more than I do," she protested weakly. But he was already settling beside her, his body heat better than any blanket. "I run hot naturally," he said. "Alpha King trait. You, however, are still human temperature and need to stay warm." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them and the forest. Kira's mind whirled with everything that had happened in the space of a single day. This morning she'd been feeding chickens. Tonight, she was a fugitive fleeing with an Alpha King who claimed she was his fated mate. "Tell me about your grandmother," Kaylin said softly, breaking the silence. "You mentioned she built the tunnel, taught you healing. But there's more, isn't there?" Kira pulled his shirt tighter around herself, breathing in his scent pine and winter storms and something uniquely him. "She raised me," Kira began, staring into the flames. "My parents died when I was young, some kind of sickness that swept through the pack. Grandmother took me in, taught me everything she knew about herbs and healing." She paused, remembering weathered hands guiding hers, a voice like honey and smoke sharing secrets. "She used to tell me stories about the old days, before the Great Division, when wolves, humans, and magical beings lived in harmony. She said the moon healers were the bridge between it, worlds keeping balance. She was preparing you," Kaylin said quietly, "teaching you your true heritage without revealing it outright." "Maybe." Kira's throat tightened. "When I turned 15 and didn't shift with the other wolves my age, the pack elders called a meeting. They said I was defective, that my wolf was broken or absent entirely. Grandmother argued with them for hours. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Then they performed the binding ritual, said it was for my protection, to prevent me from going mad without a wolf to ground me. Grandmother held my hand the whole time, crying. I didn't understand why she was so upset. I thought she was just sad I was broken." "She knew," Kaylin said, anger threading through his voice. "She knew they were lying, that they were binding your wolf deliberately." "Why, though?" Kira looked at him, desperate for answers. "If I'm what you say I am, why would my pack want to suppress that?" Kaylin's expression grew grim. "Because moon healers can see through deception, can sense corruption and dark magic. If Marcus was already planning his rise to power 15 years ago, he would have seen you as a threat, a child who might grow up to expose him. The truth of it settled over Kira like a shroud. She'd spent 3 years believing she was worthless when in reality, she'd been too valuable, too dangerous to be allowed her full potential. Your grandmother died 2 years after the binding, Kaylin said, not a question but a statement. Yes, they said it was her heart, that it just gave out one night. Kira's eyes burned with unshed tears. But she'd been perfectly healthy, strong. She wouldn't have just... She was murdered, Kaylin finished softly. I'm sorry, Kira. But it's the only explanation that makes sense. Once your wolf was bound, your grandmother became a liability, someone who knew too much, who might find a way to undo what was done. The tears Kira had been holding back finally spilled. Over. Kaylin pulled her against his chest, letting her cry for the grandmother who had protected her even in death, who had built escape routes and taught her survival skills that would save her life years later. I promise you, Kaylin murmured against her hair. When this is over, when Marcus is dealt with, and your wolf is freed, we will honor your grandmother properly. Build her a memorial in my kingdom where her sacrifice will never be forgotten. Kira pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. Why are you so certain my wolf can be freed? What if the binding is permanent? Kaylin's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away lingering tears. Because the bond between us is already weakening it. I can feel your wolf, Kira. She's there, pushing against her chains, desperate to reach her mate. His eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. She's been trying to break free for 30 days, growing stronger as we grew closer. I don't feel anything, Kira whispered. Don't you? He challenged gently. When I shifted the first time, when you saw me as a man instead of a wolf, what did you feel? Kira thought back to that moment in the barn, the instant recognition, the pull that had nothing to do with logic or reason. Like I knew you, she admitted. Like I'd been waiting for you my whole life without realizing it. That's your wolf recognizing her mate, Kaylin said. The bond forming despite the binding. And it's only going to get stronger. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her lips. May I kiss you, Kira Ashwood? Not as a king claiming his mate, but as a man asking permission from the woman who saved his life? Kira's heart thundered in her chest. Every rational part of her screamed that this was too fast, too much, too dangerous. But a deeper part, a part that had been silent for years, whispered yes. Yes, she breathed. Kaylin's lips met hers with a gentleness that contradicted his powerful frame. The kiss started soft, questioning, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, when she leaned into him instead, it deepened into something that stole her breath and set her blood on fire. This was nothing like the chaste kisses she'd witnessed between pack members. This was claiming and surrender, passion and promise, everything she'd never let herself hope for wrapped into a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaylin rested his forehead against hers. That, he said roughly, was worth surviving 30 days of poison. A laugh bubbled up from Kira's chest, unexpected and genuine. Smooth, Your Majesty. I have my moments. He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to devastatingly handsome. Though I'll admit, courtship isn't my strongest skill. You're doing fine so far. Kira assured him, then yawned despite herself. Sleep, Kaylin commanded gently, pulling her against his side. I'll keep watch. We still have 2 days of hard travel ahead. You need rest, too, Kira protested weakly, but her eyes were already closing. I'll rest when you're safe behind my kingdom walls, he promised. For now, just let me hold you. Wrapped in his warmth, surrounded by his scent. Kira slipped into sleep, and for the first time in 3 years, she dreamed not of loneliness and rejection, but of running through forests with a great black wolf at her side, her own wolf finally free and singing with joy. Somewhere in her dreams, she heard a voice ancient, feminine, filled with moonlight. The binding cracks, little healer. Soon you will remember what you truly are. Soon you will rise, and the kingdoms will tremble at the power they tried to bury. Kira smiled in her sleep, and held tighter to the king who had found her in the darkness. Dawn came cold and gray, mist rising from the forest floor like spirits ascending. Kira woke to find herself alone by the dead fire, panic spiking through her chest until she heard movement in the trees. Kaylin emerged, moments later in human form, carrying a pair of rabbits he'd clearly caught and killed with his bare hands. "Breakfast," he announced, already preparing them for cooking. "We need to keep your strength up. The next part of the journey gets more difficult." Kira sat up, brushing leaves from her hair. "More difficult than fleeing an entire pack that wants us dead?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "We cross into neutral territory today. The Shadowlands, where pack law doesn't apply and creatures older than our kingdom still roam. It's the fastest route to my lands, but also the most dangerous." "Wonderful," Kira muttered, but she helped him prepare the meal, falling into an easy rhythm that spoke of the 30 days they'd already spent in each other's company. As they ate, Kaelin outlined their route. "We follow the river for another 6 hours, then cut east through the Shadowlands. If we maintain good pace, we'll reach the border of my territory by tomorrow evening." "And if Marcus figures out where we're going?" Kira asked. "He won't risk entering the Shadowlands with a large force. Too many things in there that don't care about pack politics, only about easy prey." Kaelin's expression grew serious. "But that also means we'll be vulnerable if anything decides we look appetizing." "Comforting," Kira said dryly, making him actually laugh. "You have a Luna's spirit already," he said, admiration clear in his voice. "Most wolves would be trembling at the prospect of the Shadowlands." "I'm terrified," Kira admitted. "I'm just good at hiding it." Kaelin reached across the fire, taking her hand in his much larger one. "Then we'll be terrified together. But Kira, I need you to know something. If we encounter danger, I may have to fight. And when I do, my wolf will be fully unleashed, not the injured creature you nursed, but the Alpha King in his prime. It can be intense to witness." "I've seen you fight," Kira reminded him. "When you escaped the barn." "That was restraint," Kaelin said quietly. "What I'm capable of when protecting my mate is something else entirely. I don't want to frighten you." Kira squeezed his hand. "You won't. I trust you, Kaelin." Something profound shifted in his expression. "You're the first person to say that to me in years and mean it." They extinguished the fire and set out, Kira once again riding on Kaelin's back as he ran in wolf form. The morning passed in a blur of trees and rushing water, the landscape gradually changing from familiar forest to something wilder, more primal. Around midday, the quality of light shifted. The sun seemed dimmer somehow, filtered through a canopy that grew increasingly dense. The bird song that had accompanied their journey faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. "We're here," Kaelin said, having shifted to human form to navigate on foot through the thick undergrowth. "The Shadowlands. Stay close to me. Don't stray from the path for any reason, no matter what you down, see or hear." "What kind of creatures live here?" Kira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The kind that predate the Great Division. Spirits, wraiths, things that were never fully alive or dead. They're bound to these lands by ancient magic, unable to leave but hungry for anything that wanders in." His hand found hers, warm and reassuring. "They won't attack an Alpha King without provocation. But they will test us." As if summoned by his words, whispers began to drift through the trees. Not words exactly, but sounds that formed meaning in Kira's mind. "Lost little wolf. Where is your pack? Broken thing. Defective. Unwanted. He'll abandon you like all the others." Kira stumbled, the voices striking at her deepest fears with surgical precision. Kaelin caught her immediately, pulling her against his chest. "Don't listen," he commanded, his voice cutting through the whispers. "They feed on doubt and fear. They'll tell you anything to break your spirit." "How? Do you know they're lying?" Kira asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Because I know you," Kaelin said fiercely, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. "And you are none of those things. You're brave, strong, capably of healing what everyone else had given up for dead. You're my mate, chosen by the moon goddess herself." The whispers grew louder, angry at being defied. The shadows between the trees seemed to writhe and reach toward them with incorporeal fingers. "Alpha King. Murderer. Your parents' blood stains your hands. Brother killer. Throne stealer. Your crown is built on lies." Kaelin's entire body went rigid, his breathing harsh and ragged. Kira felt rage and pain rolling off him in waves, saw his hands beginning to shift involuntarily as his wolf surged toward the surface. "Kaelin," she said urgently, pressing her palms to his chest. "Look at me. Don't let them win." His eyes met hers, and she saw the torment there. Whatever the shadows were saying, they were hitting marks that hurt. Without thinking, driven by instinct, she didn't understand. Kira began to sing. The same healing lullaby her grandmother had taught her, the one she'd used on wounded animals and occasionally on herself when the loneliness grew too heavy to bear. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The shadows recoiled as if burned, the whispers cutting off mid-syllable. Light began to emanate from Kira's chest, soft and silvery, pushing back the unnatural darkness. Kaelin stared at her in wonder. "Your wolf," he breathed. "She's responding to the threat, trying to protect her mate even through the binding." The light grew brighter, forming a bubble around them both. Kira kept singing, her voice gaining strength as power she'd never felt before flowed through her veins. It was like the healing she'd done on Kaelin, but magnified 100-fold, as if 30 days of touching him, caring for him, had awakened something that could no longer be suppressed. The shadows fled before the light, retreating to the deeper parts of the forest. When Kira finally stopped singing, the immediate area around them was clear, almost peaceful. "That," Kaelin said, his voice rough with emotion, "was extraordinary. Do you understand what just happened?" Kira looked down at her hands, which still glowed faintly. I've never done anything like that before. Because you've never had to protect your mate before." Kaelin pulled her close, his heart racing beneath her ear. "The bond is accelerating your awakening. Your wolf is fighting the binding with everything she has because I'm in danger." "I can feel her," Kira whispered, wonder filling her voice. "For the first time in years, I can feel something inside me that isn't just emptiness." "She's there," Kaelin confirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "And she's magnificent. We just need to get you to my kingdom, to the healers who specialize in breaking dark magic. Once the binding is removed, completely, you'll be unstoppable." They pressed on through the Shadowlands, moving faster now that Kira's light provided protection. The shadows watched but didn't approach, wary of the power radiating from the pair. As evening approached, they reached the far edge of the cursed forest. The landscape opened up into rolling hills covered in purple heather, and in the distance, Kira could see mountains capped with snow. "There," Kaelin said, pointing toward the mountains. "The Shadow-Crowned Kingdom. By tomorrow night, you'll be safe within its walls." But before Kira could respond, a howl split the air, not from behind them where Marcus's pack would be, but from ahead, from Kaelin's own territory. "No," Kaelin breathed, his expression turning to stone. "That's a warning howl. My kingdom is under attack." He shifted immediately, lowering himself for Kira to climb on. But this time when he ran, it was with desperate urgency. They raced across the open ground, eating up distance at a pace that made their previous journey seem leisurely. As they crested a final hill, the Shadow-Crowned Kingdom spread before them. It was beautiful even in twilight, a city built into the mountainside, with elegant spires and buildings that seemed to grow organically from the stone itself. But beauty was marred by chaos. Smoke rose from several buildings. Warriors in unfamiliar colors swarmed through the streets, fighting against defenders who bore Kaelin's crest, a silver crown wreathed in shadows. And at the center of it all, standing on the steps of what had to be the palace, was a man who radiated corrupted power. Marcus. How? Kira gasped as Kaelin slowed to assess the situation. "How did he get here before us?" "Blood magic," Kaelin growled, fury making his wolf form shimmer with barely contained power. "He sacrificed his own warriors to open a shadow portal. Threw everything into one final assault while I was weakened and away from my seat of power." "What do we do?" Kira asked, though she already knew the answer. "We fight," Kaelin said simply. "But first, I need to get you somewhere safe." "No," Kira said firmly, surprising them both. "You need me on that battlefield. My light hurt the shadow creatures. It might work on Marcus's corrupted wolves too." Kaelin shifted, becoming human long enough to argue. "You're not a warrior. I can't risk." "You don't get to make that choice for me," Kira interrupted, meeting his gaze steadily. "I'm your mate, your Luna. Where you fight, I fight. Besides," she touched her chest where the light still flickered faintly, "I think my wolf has some opinions about what's happening to our home." Our home. The words hung between them, profound in their implications. This wasn't just Kaelin's kingdom anymore. If she accepted the bond fully, it would be hers too. Her people to protect, her responsibility to defend. Something like pride blazed in Kaylin's eyes. You're sure? Because once we enter that battle, there's no pride left explanted. Going back, Marcus will know you're alive, will know you're with me. You'll be a target for the rest of your life. I've been a target since the day I was born with moon healer blood, Kira said. I just didn't know it. Now I do, and I choose to fight. Kaylin pulled her into a fierce kiss, all teeth and desperation and promise. When they broke apart, his eyes glowed with his wolf's presence. Then we fight together, he said. But Kira, I need you to promise me something. If I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no hesitation. Because I can survive losing my kingdom, but I cannot survive losing you. Same goes for you, Kira said firmly. We both survive this. Or neither of us does. That's what mates do, right? Right, Kaylin agreed, though reluctance clear in every line of his body. He shifted back to wolf form, but instead of having Kira ride, he positioned himself at her side, a clear statement that they would enter the battle as equals. Together, they descended the battle, hill toward the chaos below. The moment they entered the city streets, corrupted wolves turned to face them. These creatures barely resembled the noble animals Kira knew from her pack. Their eyes glowed red, their fur was patchy and diseased-looking, and they moved with jerky, unnatural motions that spoke of the dark magic controlling them. Kaylin didn't hesitate. He tore into them with savage efficiency, his massive form a blur of black fur and flashing fangs. But for every corrupted wolf he felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Kira pressed her back against his, feeling their bond pulse with shared purpose. When 3 of the creatures lunged toward her, she did the only thing she could think of, she sang. The lullaby poured from her lips, carrying power she was only beginning to understand. Silver light erupted from her body, forming a shield that the corrupted wolves couldn't penetrate. When they touched it, they howled in agony, the darkness burning away from their forms. Beneath the corruption, Kira realized with horror, these were ordinary wolves, pack members who had been twisted by Marcus's magic, their wills subsumed by his dark power. They're not evil, she shouted to Kaylin. They're possessed. If I can cleanse them. She didn't finish the thought. Instead, she pushed her power outward, directing her light toward the corrupted wolves surrounding them. The cleansing hurt them, yes, but it also began to strip away the darkness controlling them. One by one, the wolves collapsed. When they rose again, the red had faded from their eyes, replaced by confusion and horror at what they'd been forced to do. Kaylin saw what she was doing and adjusted his strategy, no longer killing but containing, giving Kira time to work her healing magic on as many as possible. The Luna, someone shouted from the defending forces. The Alpha King has returned with his Luna. The cry was taken up by others, hope spreading through the ranks. Kaylin's warriors fought, with renewed vigor, pushing back against the invaders while Kira moved through the chaos like a beacon of silver light, cleansing corrupted wolves and healing wounded defenders. She had no idea where this power came from, no training in how to wield it, but her wolf knew, and that was enough. The binding was cracking with every moment, every use of her abilities hastening its collapse. Then she saw him. Marcus stood on the palace steps, watching the battle turn against him with cold fury. His eyes locked onto Kira, and recognition blazed in their depths. You, he snarled, his voice carrying unnaturally across the battlefield. The broken Omega. Except you were never broken, were you? Just hidden, just waiting to ruin everything. He raised his hands, and dark energy began to coalesce around him. Not the chaotic corruption of the possessed wolves, but something older and infinitely more dangerous. Ancient magic that shouldn't exist in the modern world. Kaylin, Kira screamed in. Warning. But Marcus wasn't aiming for the Alpha King. He was aiming for her. The blast of dark energy shot across the square like a spear of shadow. Kaylin moved faster than should have been possible, his massive wolf form leaping between Kira and the attack. The magic hit him square in the chest, and he went down with a howl that tore at Kira's heart. No. The scream that ripped from her throat wasn't entirely human. Something else emerged with it. Something that had been caged for 15 years and would be imprisoned no longer. The binding shattered. Kira felt it break like chains snapping, Felt power surge through her veins with such intensity that her human form couldn't contain it. For the first time since she was 15 years old, she shifted. The transformation was agonizing and ecstatic all at once. Bones reformed, muscles reshaped, senses exploded into clarity. When it was complete, Kira stood on 4 legs instead of 2, her fur pure white and marked with silver patterns that seemed to glow from within. She was smaller than Kaelin, more lithe, built for speed rather than raw power. But the energy radiating from her form made even Marcus take a step back. Mine, her wolf snarled, the word echoing in the minds of every supernatural creature present. You hurt our mate. You die. She launched herself at Marcus with speed that defied physics, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He threw up magical shields, but her light burned through them like paper. Her jaws closed on his arm, and where her teeth broke skin, his corruption began to unravel. Marcus screamed, trying to shake her off, but Kira's wolf was relentless. 15 years of suppression, 15 years of being told she was nothing, foiled her rage. She was moon healer and warrior, gentleness and fury. Everything her pack had tried to destroy made manifest. Other defenders joined the fight, surrounding Marcus, cutting off his escape. But it was Kira who brought him down, her light purging the darkness from his body, until nothing remained but an ordinary wolf, stripped of his stolen power. He shifted back to human form, gasping and broken on the palace steps. Impossible. A wheezed, staring at Kira with disbelief. The binding was permanent. No one can break a binding circle. No one breaks it from outside, Kira's wolf responded, her voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. But true mates? They break it from within. You never stood a chance. Then she was moving again, racing back to where Kaelin lay motionless. She shifted to human form without thinking about it, her hands finding his massive chest, searching for a heartbeat. No, 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 she chanted, tears streaming down her face. You don't get to die after everything we survived. Do you hear me, Kaelin Nightshade? I won't allow it. Her hands began to glow again, but differently than before. Not just silver light, but something that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. The mate bond, fully awakened, channeling her power directly into him. She poured everything she had into healing him, drawing out the dark magic Marcus had struck him with, replacing it with light and life and love she hadn't realized she felt until this moment. Come back to me, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. Please, I'm not ready to lose you. I just found you. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then Kaelin's chest expanded with a gasping breath. His eyes opened, that impossible color finding hers immediately. Kira, he rasped. You're wolf. You're free, she finished, laughing and crying at once, and apparently very dramatic about it. Kaelin shifted to human form, pulling her into his arms despite the protests of his healing body. Around them, the battle had ended. Marcus's forces had surrendered or fled, and Kaelin's warriors were securing the city. You're magnificent, Kaelin breathed, his hands framing her face. Your wolf is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She says you're acceptable too, Kira said, making him laugh despite the lingering pain from Marcus's attack. Just acceptable? She's very particular about her mate's qualities, Kira teased. Then her expression grew serious. You almost died protecting me. And I'd do it again, Kaelin said without hesitation. Every time without question. That's what mates do. Before Kira could respond, a figure approached, an older woman with silver hair and eyes that held ancient wisdom. She carried herself with authority that suggested high rank within the pack. Your Majesty, she said, bowing to Kaelin before turning to Kira with assessment in her gaze. And you must be the Luna we've heard so much about. Or rather, felt. That display of power was impressive. This is Morgana, Kaelin said, struggling to sit up, High Priestess of the Shadow Crown, and one of the few who remembers the old ways. A moon healer. Morgana breathed, wonder filling her voice as she studied Kira. I thought them extinct. Do you know what you are, child? What you represent? I'm still figuring that out, Kira admitted. Then allow me to educate you, Morgana said, with a slight smile. But first, let's get our king to the healing chambers. That attack was specifically designed to kill an alpha king. He needs treatment beyond what even mate bond magic can provide. Together, Kira and Morgana helped Kaelin to his feet. Warriors rushed forward to assist, but Kaelin waved them off, determined to walk into his palace under his own power with his mate at his side. As they climbed the steps Marcus had stood on minutes before, Kira looked back at the city. Her city now, her people, her home. She caught sight of Marcus being led away in chains, stripped of power and dignity. He looked small suddenly, pathetic, nothing like the terrifying figure who had controlled her life through fear and manipulation. "What happens to him?" she asked quietly. "Trial," Kaelin said. "For treason, murder, and crimes against the kingdom. The evidence we gathered over the years will bury him. He'll spend the rest of his natural life imprisoned, powerless." "And the children?" Kira's heart clenched. "You said he took 15 children. Are they?" "We'll find them," Kaelin promised. "Now that Marcus is captured, his accomplices will talk. We'll find every child and return them to their families. I swear it." Inside the palace, healers waited with supplies and worried expressions. They ushered Kaelin toward a room filled with herbs and medical equipment, but he refused to release Kira's hand. "She stays," he commanded. "My Luna stays at my side." No one argued with an Alpha King, especially not one who had just reclaimed his throne. They worked around Kira, treating Kaelin's injuries while explaining what they were doing in voices meant to reassure. As they cleaned and dressed his wounds, Morgana approached Kira with a velvet box. "This belongs to you now," she said, opening it too. Reveal a crown unlike any Kira had seen. Delicate silver worked in the shape of moonlight, set with stones that seemed to hold captured starlight. "The Luna's crown," Morgana explained. "Unworn for 7 years since Kaelin's mother passed. It's been waiting for you." "I can't," Kira whispered, staring at the beautiful object. "I don't know how to be a Luna. I don't know how to rule." "You just saved an entire kingdom using power you discovered hours ago," Morgana said dryly. "I think you'll manage." "She's right," Kaelin said from the healing bed, his voice stronger now. "You were born for this, Kira. Moon healer blood, your grandmother's teachings, 30 days learning to care for an Alpha King, all of it prepared you for this moment. But if you say just a healer one more time, I'm going to have to remind you that you shattered a 15-year-old binding through sheer force of will, purged corruption from dozens of wolves, and brought down the most dangerous. Traitor our kingdoms have seen in generations," Kaelin interrupted. "You're not just anything. You're extraordinary. You're mine. And you're exactly where you're meant to be." Kira looked at the crown, then at Kaelin, then at the people gathered around them, warriors, healers, priestesses, all watching her with hope and acceptance. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't unwanted. She was seen, valued, necessary. "Okay," she said softly, turning back to Morgana. "Show me what I need to do." Morgana's smile was radiant. "With pleasure, my Luna. With pleasure." As the priestess began explaining the responsibilities and rituals of her new position, as healers fussed over both their king and new queen, as word spread through the city that the Alpha King had returned victorious with his fated mate, Kira felt something settle deep in her chest. She was home. Finally, impossibly, home. And when Kaelin reached for her hand, squeezing gently, she knew he felt it, too. The bond between them hummed with contentment, with satisfaction, with promise of everything still to come. The journey from that stormy night, when she'd found a wounded wolf, to this moment, standing in a palace as a Luna with her mate alive beside her, felt like something from a dream. But it was real. All of it was gloriously, terrifyingly, perfectly real. "What happens now?" she asked Kaelin quietly. His eyes met hers, filled with love and certainty in future she could barely imagine. "Now?" He smiled. "Now we begin." 3 days passed in a blur of healing, planning, and preparation. Kaelin's wounds closed under the combined care of his healers and Kira's mate bond magic, each touch of her hand accelerating his recovery beyond natural limits. Marcus remained imprisoned in the depths of the palace, awaiting trial that would determine his fate. But tonight was not about vengeance or justice. Tonight was about claiming, about making official what the moon goddess had already decreed. Kira stood in chambers that were now hers, staring at her reflection in an ornate mirror. The Luna's crown sat on her white hair, catching candlelight and throwing it back in silver fragments. Her dress was simple but elegant, midnight blue that brought out the unusual color of her eyes that now held her wolf's presence, visible and proud. "You're nervous," Morgana observed, adjusting the crown slightly. That's normal. Every Luna feels this way before the claiming ceremony. What if I'm not enough? Kira whispered. What if the pack doesn't accept me? Child, Morgana said gently, turning Kira to face her. You purged corruption from their loved ones. You broke a binding that should have been permanent. You stood beside your mate against impossible odds and won. They already love you. This ceremony is just making it official. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young warrior entered, bowing slightly. Luna, the Alpha King requests your presence in the throne room. The pack is assembled. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs, but she straightened her shoulders. Tell him I'll be there momentarily. When the warrior left, Morgana handed Kira a small velvet pouch. Your grandmother wanted you to have this. She left it with me 17 years ago, the day before she died. Sad when the time came, I would know when to give it to you. With trembling fingers, Kira opened the pouch. Inside was a letter in her grandmother's distinctive handwriting, and a silver pendant identical to the one she'd worn for years. My dearest Kira, if you're reading this, it means you've found your mate and your wolf has awakened. I'm so proud of you, my brave girl. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the binding, couldn't stop what they did, but I always knew you were stronger than any chains they could forge. The pendant I'm leaving you belonged to your mother. She was a moon healer too, powerful and beautiful and destined for greatness. They killed her because they feared what she could become, what you would become. Wear it tonight. Let her spirit witness your triumph. You are everything they tried to destroy, and you survived. You won. Love always. Grandmother tears streamed down Kira's face as she clutched the letter to her chest. Morgana gently took the pendant, fastening it around Kira's neck alongside her own. The two pieces of silver seemed to resonate together, humming with ancient power. She was right about you, Morgana said softly. Your mother and grandmother both. You're exactly what the kingdoms needed. Now go show them what a true Luna looks like. The throne room was packed with wolves from every corner of the Shadow Crown territory. They lined the walls, filled the balconies, crowded the doorways. All eyes turned to Kira as she entered, and the murmur of conversation died into expectant silence. At the far end of the room, Kalen sat on his throne, a massive chair carved from black stone and inlaid with silver. He wore his ceremonial armor, the crown tattoo on his neck, and shoulder blazing with power. But it was the way he looked at her, with love and pride and barely restrained hunger, that made Kira's breath catch. She walked toward him, each step measured and deliberate. The crowd watched in reverent silence as their Luna approached their king. When she reached the dais, Kalen stood, descending the steps to meet her as an equal. He took her hands in his, the simple gesture sending sparks of electricity through their bond. Kira Ashwood, he said, his deep voice carrying through the chamber. For 30 days you nursed a wounded wolf without knowing his identity. You showed compassion when you had every reason to turn away. You sacrificed everything to protect me, to stand beside me, to fight for a kingdom you'd never seen. He released one of her hands, drawing a ceremonial dagger from his belt. The blade gleamed silver in the candlelight, etched with runes that pulsed with moonlight. By the laws of our people and the blessing of the moon goddess, I claim you as my mate, my Luna, my equal in all things. Do you accept this claim? Kira's voice rang out clear and strong. I accept. Kalen drew the blade across his palm, blood welling bright and red. He offered the dagger to Kira, who took it with steady hands and made an identical cut on her own palm. They pressed their hands together, blood mingling, the mate bond flaring so brightly that several wolves gasped. Kira felt it snap into place completely, no longer just a pull or a sense of rightness, but an unbreakable connection that tied her soul to his. Then by blood and bond, by moon and shadow, I mark you as mine, Kalen said. He pulled her close, tilting her head to expose her throat. His eyes met hers one last time, asking silent permission. Kira nodded, and his teeth sank into the juncture of her neck and shoulder. The claiming bite sent pleasure-pain cascading through her entire body. This was more than physical, it was magic, destiny, completion. When Kalen pulled back, his mark gleamed on her skin, a silver crown that matched his tattoo. My turn, Kira whispered, her wolf rising to meet the challenge. She'd never marked anyone before, had no idea if she could without full transformation, but instinct guided her. Her teeth lengthened slightly, just enough, and she returned the mark on Kalen's other shoulder. The moment her teeth broke his skin, Power exploded between them. Silver light erupted from their joined forms, washing over the assembled pack in waves of pure cleansing energy. Wolves who still carried lingering traces of Marcus's corruption felt it burn away. Injuries healed, old grievances faded. When the light finally dimmed, Kaelin and Kira stood at the center of it all, marked and mated and glowing with shared power. "Behold your Luna," Kaelin announced, his voice resonating with alpha command. "Kira Nightshade, Moon Healer, my fated mate, and rightful queen of the Shadow Crown." The throne room erupted in howls of celebration. Wolves threw back their heads and sang their approval, the sound shaking the very foundations of the palace. Kira had never heard anything more beautiful. Kaelin pulled her into a deep kiss, sealing their bond before their people. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, their wolves singing in harmony. "That was incredible," Kira gasped. "That was just the beginning," Kaelin promised, his eyes dark with promise. The celebration lasted deep into the night, but eventually, Kaelin led Kira away from the crowds to the royal chambers. Their chambers now. "There's something I need to show you," he said, guiding her to a balcony that overlooked the kingdom. Below, the city sparkled with lights. But beyond the walls, Kira could see movement groups of people approaching the gates. As they drew closer, she realized they were families, and with them, children. "The rescued children," she breathed. "All 15, Kaelin confirmed. Marcus's accomplices talked quickly once they realized he couldn't protect them. "We found where he'd been keeping them, imprisoned but alive. They're going home tonight." Tears blurred Kira's vision as she watched reunions happening at the gates. Parents clutching children they'd thought lost forever. Siblings embracing. Joy and relief palpably even from this distance. "This is what we fight for," Kaelin said softly. "Not power or territory, but moments like these. Families made whole, children safe, balance restored." "I understand now," Kira said. "What my grandmother tried to teach me. Healing isn't just about bodies. It's about making broken things whole, whether that's a person, a pack, or a kingdom." Kaelin's arms came around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "And you've healed more than you know. This kingdom was dying slowly under the weight of corruption. You brought it back to life." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the celebrations below. Finally, Kira turned in his arms to face him. "I need to tell you something," she said. "About the 40 days. 30 days, Kaelin corrected with a slight smile. 40, Kira insisted. "Because I'm counting the 10 days from now, when we'll look back on this moment and realize it was when everything truly began. When we stopped running and started building. When we became not just mates, but partners in every sense." Understanding dawned in Kaelin's eyes. "You're planning something. I want to establish a sanctuary," Kira said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "A place where wolves who are different, who don't fit the traditional molds, can come for healing and training. Where children with unusual gifts won't be bound or suppressed, but taught to embrace what makes them special. In Ibladagrees and Ariended, Ingsteract, a Moon Healer Academy," Kaelin said, excitement building in his voice. "Training the next generation to maintain balance across all kingdoms." "Exactly." Kira's hands gripped his armor. "Will you support this, even though it challenges the old ways?" "Kira," Kaelin said seriously, "I didn't survive assassination, cross the Shadowlands, and fight for my throne just to maintain the status quo. The old ways nearly destroyed us. I want to build something better, and I can't think of anyone more qualified to lead that change than you." "We lead it together," Kira corrected. "Always together." "Always together. Always," Kaelin agreed. He swept her into his arms, carrying her inside to their chambers. The massive bed was covered in furs and silks, candles casting everything in warm, golden light. But Kaelin didn't head for the bed immediately. Instead, he set Kira down gently, kneeling before her. "What are you doing?" she asked, surprised to see an Alpha King on his knees. "What I should have done the first moment I could speak," Kaelin said. "Thanking you properly. You saved my life, Kira. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that strength isn't just about power, but about compassion and courage and choosing to help even when it costs you everything." His hands found hers, holding them like precious treasures. "I don't deserve you," he continued quietly. But I promise to spend every day trying to. I promise to protect you, to honor you, to stand beside you as you reshape the world into something better. I promise to be the mate you deserve." Kira's fingers trembled as she touched his face. "You already are. From the moment you trusted me enough to stay when you could have left. From the moment you called me your mate before your enemies. From the moment you fought for this kingdom with me at your side. You've been everything I never knew I needed." She drew him to his feet, then up, until his lips met hers in a kiss that held all the words they hadn't yet found. The mate bond sang between them, complete and perfect, and eternal. When they finally pulled apart, both were glowing faintly with residual magic. "My Luna," Kaelin murmured against her temple. "My moonlight, my miracle. My king," Kira responded. "My shadow, my home." They spent that night learning each other in ways that went beyond physical, sharing memories, dreams, fears, and hopes through the bond that connected them. When dawn came, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they stood together on the balcony, watching their kingdom wake. "What do you think happens next?" Kira asked, leaning into Kaelin's warmth. "We rebuild," Kaelin said. "We establish your sanctuary. We root out the last of Marcus's corruption and make sure nothing like this can happen again. We rule fairly, love fiercely, and prove that the old prophecies were right when moon and shadow unite. Balance is restored." "That simple?" Kira teased. "That complicated," Kaelin corrected with a laugh. "But worth it. Every moment, every challenge, worth it." A knock at the door interrupted them. Morgana entered with a warm smile. "Forgive the intrusion, Your Majesties, but there's someone here who insists on meeting the Luna." An elderly woman entered, her face weathered but kind. She moved with the careful steps of someone whose body had known hard labor and harder years. "Luna," she said, bowing deeply. "I'm Alara. I was your grandmother's closest friend before everything happened." Kira's breath caught. "You knew her?" "I knew you," Alara said gently. "I was there the day you were born. There when your mother passed. There when they performed the binding ritual." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm so sorry I couldn't stop them. I tried, but I was just an omega, with no power, no voice." "You're here now," Kira said, crossing to take the woman's hands. "That's what matters. Your grandmother asked me to give you a message if you ever broke free," Ilara said. "She said to tell you, the barn was never your prison, it was your chrysalis. And now, my butterfly, you're finally free to fly." The words broke something open in Kira's chest. She pulled Ilara into an embrace, this woman who had carried her grandmother's words for years, waiting for the right moment to deliver them. "Thank you," Kira whispered. "For remembering, for caring, for being here." Kira whispered. "I always believed you'd rise," Ilara said. "Your grandmother did too. We just had to wait for the right wolf to find you." Kaelin moved to stand beside Kira, his presence solid and reassuring. "You're welcome here any time, Ilara. Any friend of my mate's grandmother is family." As Ilara left, promising to return for the sanctuary's opening, Kira turned to face her mate, her king, her future. 40 days, she said softly. "What?" Kaelin asked, confused. "From the night I found you bleeding in the snow to this moment, it's been exactly 40 days. Kira smiled. 40 days to go from broken and alone to healed and whole. 40 days to find my mate, my wolf, my purpose. 40 days, Kaelin repeated, pulling her close. The number of close. Transformation. Of trial and triumph. Of endings and beginnings. "And now?" Kira asked. "Now we have forever," Kaelin said, his mark glowing silver on her throat as he kissed her. "And I intend to make every single day count." Below them, the kingdom celebrated. Above them, the moon still visible despite the dawn seemed to shine with approval. And between them, the bond hummed with satisfaction, with love, with the certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The wolfless healer and the wounded king, the moon healer and the alpha, the Luna and her mate. Their story had begun in a barn with blood and desperation. It would continue in a palace with hope and healing. And it would never end, not truly, because some bonds transcend lifetimes. Kira Nightshade, marked and mated and finally free, looked at her future and smiled. The journey had been worth every moment. The weeks following the claiming ceremony transformed the Shadow Crown Kingdom in ways no one could have predicted. Kira's sanctuary began taking shape in the eastern wing of the palace, a space dedicated to healing, training, and nurturing wolves who didn't fit traditional molds. But it was the trial of Marcus that drew wolves from every territory, all coming to witness justice for crimes that had haunted the kingdoms for years. Kira stood beside Kaylin's throne, wearing her Luna's crown and the confidence of a woman who had finally found her place. The throne room was packed with witnesses, victims' families, and alphas from neighboring packs who had come to see the traitor face his reckoning. Marcus was brought in chains, stripped of his power and dignity. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without the corruption that had amplified his strength. When his eyes found Kira, hatred blazed in their depths. "You," he spat. "This is all your fault. If you'd just stayed broken, stayed hidden." "If I'd stayed broken," Kira interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of a true Luna, "you would have continued destroying innocent lives, sacrificing children, corrupting wolves who trusted you. My awakening didn't cause your downfall, Marcus. Your own evil did." Kaylin stood, his presence commanding absolute silence. "Marcus Blackwood, former beta of the Ashwood pack, you stand accused of treason, murder, kidnapping, use of forbidden magic, and crimes against the crown. How do you plead?" "I regret nothing," Marcus snarled. "The old ways were dying. I did what was necessary to seize power you hadn't earned." Kaylin cut him off. "To murder innocents for your own ambition, to nearly destroy the balance between kingdoms that has kept peace for generations." He gestured to the families seated in the front rows, parents who had lost children, wolves who had been corrupted, victims of Marcus's schemes stretching back years. "These people will testify to your crimes. We have evidence, confessions from your accomplices, and witnesses who watched you perform blood rituals. You have no defense, no excuse, no redemption coming." Marcus's composure finally cracked. "I should have killed you when I had the chance. Should have made sure you died in that forest." "But you didn't," Kira said quietly. "Because the moon goddess had other plans. She led Kaylin to my barn, led me to heal him, led us both to this moment. Your failure wasn't just tactical, Marcus. It was destined." The trial lasted 3 days. Testimony after testimony painted a picture of a wolf consumed by ambition, willing to sacrifice anything and anyone for power. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniably. On the 3rd day, Kaylin delivered the verdict. "Marcus Blackwood, you are found guilty on all counts. You will be stripped of your wolf permanently, bound by the same magic you used to suppress others. You will live out your days as a human, powerless, and alone, with nothing but your memories of what you lost. This is the mercy we grant you, your life, but not your power. Never your power again." Marcus screamed as the binding ritual was performed, his wolf torn from him by Morgana's ancient magic. When it was done, he collapsed, weeping, truly broken for the first time. As guards led him away to permanent exile in the human territories, Kira felt no satisfaction, only sadness for what he could have been if he'd chosen a different path. "Justice isn't always satisfying," Kaylin said quietly, reading her emotions through their bond. "But it's necessary." "I know," Kira replied. "I just wish he'd made better choices." "That's what makes you a good Luna," Kaylin said, pulling her close. "You still see the potential for redemption even in those who don't deserve it." 3 months after the trial, Kira's sanctuary officially opened. Wolves from across the kingdoms came seeking healing, training, and acceptance. The first student was a young girl named Arya, who, like Kira, had been told she was wolfless. "I can feel something inside me, Arya," whispered during their first session. "But it's trapped, locked away." Kira placed her hands on either side of the girl's face, letting her healing light flow gently. "You're not wolfless, Arya. You're bound. But unlike me, you won't have to wait 15 years. We're going to free your wolf today." The binding-breaking ritual had become Kira's specialty. One by one, she freed wolves who had been suppressed, their families weeping with joy as children shifted for the first time or adults reclaimed powers stolen from them. Kaylin watched from the doorway as Kira worked, pride and love radiating through their bond. His mate had become everything the kingdoms needed: healer, teacher, Luna, and symbol of hope for those who had been cast aside. "She's remarkable," Morgana said, joining him. "In 3 months, She's freed 47 wolves from binding spells. That's more than any moon healer in recorded history. She's just getting started, Kaelin said with certainty. That evening, as they prepared for bed, Kira noticed Kaelin seemed distant, preoccupied. "What's wrong?" she asked, touching his shoulder. He turned, pulling her into his arms. "Nothing's wrong. Everything is more right than I ever thought possible. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to be taken away. I have not read her. I love Dispen. I have not read her to get the mention. It won't be," Kira said firmly. "We fought too hard, sacrificed too much. This is our happy ending, Kaelin. We get to keep it." "Do we?" He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "Kira, you've accomplished incredible things these past months. You've built a sanctuary that's changing lives. You've freed wolves who had given up hope. You're becoming legendary." "And?" Kira prompted, sensing there was more. "And I'm terrified that one day you'll realize you could do all of this without me. That being tied to a king, to politics and responsibilities you never asked for, is holding you back." Kira stared at him, then started laughing. The sound was so unexpected that Kaelin blinked in confusion. The resources to build the sanctuary, the authority to change laws, the protection to work without fear. But more than that, you gave me confidence, purpose, love. She cupped his face in her hands. "I was a cast-off living alone in a barn, believing I was worthless. You saw through all of that to who I really was. You trusted me with your life when you were at your most vulnerable. You claimed me before your entire kingdom and never once made me feel less than your equal." Her thumbs brushed his cheekbones. "I don't do this work despite being your mate. I do it because I'm your mate. Because you showed me what it means to lead with compassion and strength. You're not holding me back. You're lifting me up every single day." Kaelin's eyes gleamed with unshed tears. "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do," Kira said firmly. "We deserve each other. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes." He kissed her then, pouring all his love and gratitude and relief into the connection between them. When they pulled apart, both were glowing faintly with their bond's light. "There's something else," Kaelin said, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never seen. "Something I've been planning." He led her back to the balcony where they'd stood on their claiming night. Below, the kingdom sparkled under a full moon. But tonight, something was different. The streets were lined with thousands of candles, forming a pattern that took Kira's breath away. It was a wolf and a moon, intertwined, glowing against the darkness. "Every candle," Kaelin said softly, "represents a life you've touched. A wolf you've freed, a family you've helped, a person who found hope because of you. The pack wanted you to see how much you mean to them, to us." Tears streamed down Kira's face as she took in the beautiful display. "It's perfect. You're perfect," Kaelin corrected. He took her hand, pressing it over his heart where her mark glowed on his skin. 40 days you nursed me in that barn. 40 days I spent learning what it meant to be cared for without expectation, healed without judgment, loved without condition. And I learned what it meant to matter," Kira said. "To be seen, valued, needed. You'll always be needed," Kaelin promised. "Always be valued, always be loved. For the rest of our lives and whatever comes after, you're mine and I'm yours. Forever marked," Kira whispered, touching the claiming bite on her throat that had healed into a beautiful silver scar. "Forever mated," Kaelin agreed, his own mark glowing in response to her touch. They stood together under the full moon, watching their kingdom celebrate the Luna who had healed them, and the Alpha King who had never stopped fighting for what was right. The journey from a forgotten barn to a palace had been impossible, terrifying, and absolutely worth every moment. Somewhere in the wire, distance, a wolf howled joyful, free, whole. Others joined in, their voices rising in a symphony of pack bonds and new beginnings. Kira's wolf surged forward, demanding to be heard. She threw back her head and added her voice to the song, silver and pure and full of triumph. Kalen joined her, his deeper howl harmonizing perfectly with hers. Alpha and Luna, shadow and moon, king and queen, forever marked by destiny, forever bound by love, forever committed to building a world where wolves like them different, powerful, destined could thrive without fear. The 40 days of nursing had become a lifetime of partnership. The wounded wolf had become a devoted mate. The cast-off Omega had become a legendary Luna. And their story, marked in silver and shadow, would be told for generations to come, a reminder that sometimes the greatest destinies begin with the simplest act of compassion. Kira looked at Kalen, at the kingdom they'd built together, at the future stretching bright and limitless before them. She was exactly where she was meant to be, and she had never been more whole. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.